What's going on, guys? It's Luke here for SimBoxx, and we're deep into fight week. It's Anthony Joshua versus Robert Helenius. Goes down headlining the O2 Arena in London, and this is the prediction. I'm delighted to be joined by Josh Hart from JTH Boxing. He's been down there at the fight week festivities. Check his channel out for all the build-up content, but we're here to predict the main event. Josh, we was expecting the big rematch with Dillian Whyte. That, of course, was put paid to last Saturday when Dillian Whyte failed yet another VADA drug test. You know, that's a conversation for another time. We're here for our predictions, but disappointing news. And Robert Helenius has stepped in. Very experienced heavyweight, 39 years of age now. Been in with some of the biggest names in the division, including Dillian Whyte, Derek Chisora, of course, Deontay Wilder. And at a week's notice, I think a very credible opponent for Anthony Joshua to be facing. First of all, Josh, your thoughts on Helenius stepping in at this late hour for the fight with Anthony Joshua?
I think it's the best of a bad situation. Obviously, you've got to look through the names that were available. Obviously, I know a lot of fighters threw their name in the hat, but it's also you've got to look at whether Matchroom want to take the risk. Obviously, Andy Ruiz threw his name in the hat for a last-minute replacement, but last time he did that, he flipped the script completely. So I think they wanted to take someone who might not pose as much a threat. Obviously, Robert Helenius did literally fight last Saturday in some castle in Finland. So, for him to go from that to fighting in front of what was meant to be a sold-out O2, but let's be real, a lot of refunds have probably gone back in. I think it is the best opponent they could get. I think stylistically, he could be seen quite similar to Deontay Wilder just based on the build. He's a very big man. It's a bit of a switch for AJ of what he was preparing for. Obviously, preparing for Dillian Whyte, preparing for a small, stocky man, and now he's switched to a man who's probably bigger than him, got a longer reach. But I still think AJ will get through him. Obviously, that's pretty much my prediction already there. I wasn't going to say that bit just yet, but oh well. But I think it's the best replacement they could get in on short notice. Obviously, a week is not a lot of time at all. So yeah, I think they've picked the best guy out of everyone that was available.
Yeah, I think I find myself agreeing. So with Anthony Joshua, record of 25-3, he's no longer the golden boy of British boxing at the minute. He's got the 3 losses on his record. He's former 2-time unified heavyweight champion of the world. He's looking to climb back to the top of the mountain. Robert Helenius, 32 wins, 4 losses. As I say, he's had that loss to Deontay Wilder, which was another highlight reel knockout from Deontay Wilder. And inevitably, the comparisons will be made regardless of the result here from Anthony Joshua. With that fight being on the horizon, as we say, the result is going to be compared to that. Although Joshua is a big puncher, he's not that one-punch knockout artist that Deontay Wilder is. Nobody's that kind of fighter. Let's be honest. But I think at this stage for Anthony Joshua, I think it's a credible opponent given, as you say, the time scales. The Andy Ruizes of this world was never going to step in at this late hour. The money involved was not there. So let's get into our predictions, Josh. I think I'll give you the reins on this one first.
Well, I kind of already said it a little bit in the last, but I said AJ does take him out. I think AJ, a lot of people say, oh, he'll get him out inside 6. For some reason, I don't see that happening. But then again, I do see it happening. But it's just about the AJ we see on the night. When we look at AJ versus Franklin, everyone's like, oh, AJ looks like he's back. He looks like he's going to come with vengeance and, he might have that old killer again. And we just didn't see that. But I feel like there's a lot more riding on AJ's shoulders this time. Obviously, we were able to accept, okay, he's gone to points, but it was his first fight back since, the little meltdown in the ring after Usyk. So, you could cut him the slack against Franklin. But I think this time, if he goes to points, I think it is a bad look for him if it goes to points, especially when you look at, what other people have done to Helenius. Obviously, what Wilder's done, what Dillian Whyte's done, what Gerald Washington's done. Obviously, Gerald Washington's on the undercard. He's knocked out Robert Helenius. So I do think AJ has to take him out, and I think it has to be done early. I'm going to say AJ in the mid rounds between 6 to 8. I don't think he's going to come out all guns blazing and just try and swing and just get him out. I think he'll still be very calculated. Obviously, the reason he wanted to fight in August and have this fight, which he didn't need to have, was to drill more things that he's learned under Derek James. Obviously, he's only had 1 fight with him. He wants to, get as much experience with Derek James before heading into the big fights with, what seems to be Deontay Wilder next, but you never know who it could be. But I still think we'll see a destructive knockout. When you look at the face-off earlier, AJ seemed like he's got a bit of grip between his teeth still, The way he was talking to Helenius, you could see that there's a bit of tension there. And I feel like, AJ saying like, oh, we can either fight now or fight tomorrow, regardless we're fighting. I feel like he might have a bit of that killer mindset back in him, but I think we'll see a bit more of a calculated killer from AJ. and that's why I'm going to lock in AJ between 6 and 8.
Okay. So there's a lot of what you've said there that feeds into my prediction, and I think that after the Usyk fights, he was clearly outboxed there by the master boxer in Usyk, and then he took on Jermaine Franklin, who himself was a slippery operator, a better boxer than we give him credit for. And I think if we're saying this is a rebuild for Anthony Joshua, that Robert Helenius is the ideal shape, the ideal stature, the ideal age for Anthony Joshua to display that raw power, that raw aggression that made him the darling of the British public. You see the fight when he won the Commonwealth title, when he knocked out, was it Gary Cornish? He was very similar in stature to Robert Helenius. And yeah, I think this is ideal for Anthony Joshua. It's never ideal when it's a late switch of opponent, but let's be honest, at this stage of his career, Robert Helenius isn't a Dillian Whyte. Joshua will be able to make those adjustments. Very experienced now at this stage of his career, and I think this is tailor-made for Anthony Joshua. I think he'll want to put his name back on the lips of the casual boxing fan that will see, a highlight reel knockout go viral. It will get that traction. It will get him spoken about in the conversation again with Deontay Wilder, with Tyson Fury. So with all that being said, along with the spite that you mentioned at the weigh-in, that Joshua, that's not being the commercial juggernaut that he is, that he's kind of, the street kid at heart. And he was telling him, as you say, we're either going to fight today or we're going to fight tomorrow regardless. And I think that's all going to play a part in Joshua trying to make a statement tomorrow. So my prediction will be Anthony Joshua to win by knockout. And I'm going early. I don't think it'll be as early as Deontay Wilder, but I think Anthony Joshua will make a statement here and he'll knock him out inside 3 rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if your prediction comes true, that he is cautious and tries to get the round in early and takes him out middle rounds. But I think Helenius will go for it at some point. As you've seen with Deontay Wilder, he tried putting Wilder on the back foot and that went disastrously wrong for him. And I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that here. And I'm going Joshua between rounds 1 and 3.
I mean, when I said I could see that happening as well, I think it depends how Helenius approaches it as well. Because I think while AJ could hunt him down, Helenius could also then, he could then end up being on the front foot. I don't think AJ's got that same power that he can generate on the back foot like what Wilder does. Closely, when you watch the Wilder knockout on Helenius, he didn't even fully extend his arm. He literally had his arm halfway out and it's connected and just put him to sleep. And AJ's not got, while he's a very, very hard hitter, he's not got that Wilder power. But I could see it going early. I think it just depends on how either if AJ does come out and he's just thinking of making a statement. If AJ's just coming out and thinking of making a statement now, just based on what we've seen over the last week, there's a lot. I'd say there's probably more pressure on his name now than what there is when the Dillian Whyte fight was there. Obviously, a lot of things have changed. It's no longer a pay-per-view headline. There's not going to be as many people in attendance. A lot of people, while none of this is Anthony Joshua's fault, he's still going to be getting a little bit of stick. No matter what you do, you're going to get a bit of stick if you're in the spotlight. So I think there'll be a lot more in terms of him being spiteful, him looking to take him out, him looking to be brutal and vicious. But I still think 6 to 8 is where it'll go. I think, obviously, you got to think at the end of the day, the main man in his team is Derek James. Derek James arguably probably knows him best now. He knows what he needs to do. Obviously, like you said, AJ is very experienced. He knows how he needs to approach with Helenius. Obviously, while it's completely a different style to what he's preparing for, he's fought guys like this before. He's sparred Helenius in the past. While they're many years ago, you don't necessarily see heavyweights change their style completely. So I think AJ might already have the blueprint on how to take out Helenius. But either way, I think we can both agree Anthony Joshua needs a brutal knockout, and I think he will get a brutal knockout.
He does with that run of form that he's on. We don't want to stretch this out too far, but with that run of form that he's on, he went the distance with Franklin. He went the distance twice with Usyk, losing both times. Then he had the stoppage over Pulev. He had the points win over Ruiz. He was stopped by Ruiz. The points win over Parker. So he's not got a lot of knockouts on his record, considering he started off like an absolute freight train, and he was blowing people away left, right, and centre. That was it 2 stoppage wins in the past 9 fights or something like that. So yeah, I definitely think that he needs to make a statement here. For our regular listeners, I got my Terence Crawford, Errol Spence pick absolutely bang on. So I'm gonna gloat about that. I'm gonna get my flowers for that. So if you fancy a flutter, Luke's picks are the way to go at the minute.
You know what? I said we do need to talk about that. We'll save that for next week. I'd say save that for the next one. I think we've got a lot to talk about in the next one. But very quickly, if we've got a little bit of time, I just want to quickly do a little bit of the undercard. I think we'll only really talk about the heavyweight fights because they're the only like fights on the card where there is a bit more 50-50. When you look at obviously, Brandon Scott, George Nadard, Mazer Courtney, and Campbell Hatton, obviously they're all in their tune-up fights again. Just getting that more experience. But when you look at obviously Johnny Fisher, he's in his first title fight. I think he overcomes Harry Armstrong. A lot of people are talking like Harry Armstrong could pull off the upset, but I don't see that happening. I just think Johnny Fisher is too good. I'm not saying he's the complete product, but I do think he's better than Harry Armstrong. I do think he'll probably still stop him. I want to get your thoughts on Johnny Fisher first.
Yeah, I think Johnny Fisher is a great prospect. He seems a really good guy. His dad, Fisher Senior, seems to come in for a Marmite opinion on Twitter. You have a love him or hate him. I think the guy's brilliant. He's out there and he's making money and he's exploiting his fame, if you like. He's having a bit of fun. It's totally harmless, but he divides opinion. Maybe that at some point is overshadowing his son's career. But let's have it right. Johnny Fisher's not put a foot wrong or a glove wrong in the ring yet. He's stopped all but one of his opponents, I think. And I think another stoppage is incoming on Saturday.
And then what else we got? We got Derek Chisora versus Gerald Washington, and that's obviously actually the co-main event. I don't know how that fight's going to play out. Originally, when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, you know what? Chisora might get this one. You'll get this one a bit easier. But now when you actually look at Gerald Washington, he seems game. He seems like he's, obviously while this fight was only announced last week, they're going to have known about it a lot longer than what we have. I don't know how that one goes. I want to get your prediction first. Normally, I go first with the predictions, but I want to get yours here.
So with this, it's car crash TV, and at this point, Derek Chisora has been a great servant to the game. He's had his controversies, of course, but he's always delivered in the ring, especially these past 5, 6, 7 years when he's had this autumn summer to his career. He had great wins over Carlos Takam, David Price, and then more recently he's not looked so good. The Tyson Fury fight, it looked like that was it for Derek Chisora. He took such a one-sided beating. A lot of people was calling for him not to be back in the ring, and here we are with another pay-per-view appearance for Del Boy. And whilst I'm happy that he's getting paid, is it going to be a case of in 10, 15 years we're all going to have blood on our hands if this man's faculties are being lost? Then he's not going to be enjoying life and being able to spend the money that he's made. If he touch wood, becomes seriously ill, because he takes a lot of punishment, Derek Shaw, doesn't he? He's never really in a dull fight, especially recently. Gerald Washington, I never realised he was so old, to be honest. I spoke to Gerald Washington a few years ago. 42 years of age, I think he is coming into this fight. And he's not in a great run of form. He had that win over Robert Helenius a few years back. So this, like I say, it's car crash TV. If I was to put my house on it, I'd say Derek Shaw is going to get the stoppage. I don't think Gerald Washington is the fighter that he was, and with all due respect, he was never at the very top of the division. So yeah, I'd go Derek Chisora, late TKO.
See, I've got a feeling. I don't know. I think it depends how Chisora approaches this one. Obviously, we know how Chisora approaches every fight. He'll come forward and he'll come swinging. It's like you mentioned. I do believe he should consider retirement, but let's be real. If he's not retired by now, a lot of people are probably calling for retirement after he lost to Parker for the second time. And that was nearly 2 years ago now. I was there that night, and obviously I remember a lot of people saying that should be it. And he's still going now. I mean, Tony Bell, you said it best earlier. On the weigh-in show, he said something along the lines of boxing's going to retire Derek Chisora rather than Derek Chisora retiring himself. It's going to get to a point where he's going to be forced to retire. So I think he should have this one. Realistically, I think everyone will be in agreement with me when I say this. Have this one, win or lose, step back. Obviously, he's getting paid again, but it is getting to a point now. You can see it when he talks at press conferences. His speech is a lot more slurred. He can't always get his words out. It's very hard to sometimes understand what he's saying. I would prefer to see him. Then he always talks about getting paid. Every press conference you see him at, he always says that Eddie Hearn's not paying him enough. He's made a lot of money in his career. And at the end of the day, the point of making this money now is so when you retire, you're financially set. You're very, very wealthy. You can enjoy the rest of your life. That's the whole benefit of being a boxer. Put in all this work now, and you get to retire a lot earlier than the likes of me and you. We're going to be working till we're 70. 64. So, you know, we're going to be working a lot longer than them. And they're going to have all this money to enjoy. But like you say, the longer he keeps going, the chance of him being able to enjoy that money just goes, it gets lower and lower and lower every time. So while I don't think he'll take as much damage in this fight, if he wins this one, he will probably look at another fight. He'll probably start calling for a shot at the top. You know, there was all this talk of him fighting AJ when Dillian White first pulled out. When you look at the list of names that got mentioned, all of the heavyweights on the undercard got mentioned, and Derek Chisora, some people wanted Derek Chisora in there as the favourite. And at one point,
That
it's
was
he
wrong
didn't get chopped in.
on so many levels. You know, from the fact that Joshua's 258 management team managed Derek Chisora, the fact that the buddies out of the ring, the fact that it was on late notice, that Derek Chisora is at the point of his career that he is. For me, that was so wrong on so many levels. And I'm actually not, you know, I'm not a hater of Sam Jones, but when he come out, I don't know whether it was just to garner social media attention for himself when he said, you know, put Derek Chisora in. I thought that was a terrible look. And, you know, he was one of the main advocates for Del Boy retiring after the Tyson Fury fight. And now he's asking for him to go in with one of the top 3 heavyweights on the planet, top 4 heavyweights on the planet. Yeah, for me, win, lose or draw on Saturday, I'd love to see him step back. If he gets a highlight win, he rides off into the sunset. If he loses to Gerald Washington, and, you know, who do we realistically put him with next? You know, would it be like a Fabio Wardley or a David Adelaide? Does he become cannon fodder then? You know, I wouldn't want to see that for Chisora. So yeah, definitely win, lose or draw, step away from the game, respectfully.
Regardless, though, of all of that, my prediction, I do think I don't know. I've not seen a lot of Gerald Washington. What I have seen, I'm impressed by him, but he's not been in the ring since the first day of 2022. We're now over halfway through 2023. So it's been a very long time since he's last been in the ring. Obviously, Chisora hasn't fought since December, but it was that beat down against Fury. He didn't really do a lot that night apart from just absorb punches, literally just absorb punch after punch after punch. But I do think Derek Chisora will stop him. No clue as of when. It's probably later than early because he's not one of those fighters with one shot knockout power. He's one of those ones he'll break you down. He'll probably just hit you with a load of left and right hooks. He's a very heavy-handed man. So I do believe we'll see Chisora stoppage, but I couldn't tell you when. I really couldn't.
Finally, the other big heavyweight fight on the card of the 4 is the undefeated Filip Hrgovic against Dempsey McKean, also undefeated. I think is it an IBF final eliminator, the winner. I think
the winner of this will get called to fight Usyk or Dubois if Dubois does pull off the upset the very next day after the fight.
Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting fight, especially given that Dempsey McKean was reportedly in line for a WBC heavyweight world title shot against Tyson Fury. I've not seen too much of Dempsey McKean. I know he's been a sparring partner for the likes of Anthony Joshua and others. With that undefeated record, he's not tasted defeat as a pro. For a long time with Filip Hrgovic, I thought he was the next coming of a Vladimir Klitschko, that he looked nigh on unbeatable, and then he ran into Zhilei Zhang. And now, in hindsight, you know, when you see what Zhang done to Joe Joyce, that maybe we discredited Hrgovic too much. I did score that for Zhang that night, don't get me wrong, but that it's no disgrace going to war with Zhang and being in a close fight, which Hrgovic was, given that Zhang went on to stop Joe Joyce. So I think this is a good opportunity for Hrgovic to re-establish himself as the dark horse of the heavyweight division against a fellow undefeated fighter on a big card, on a big show, and then line himself up for that Usyk Dubois winner later on this year or early in 2024. So my prediction would be a Hrgovic stoppage between 6 and 10.
See, for me, I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Dempsey McKean. I know, obviously, you know, we've not seen a lot of him. He's not really been in a big fight. And when you look at Hrgovic's win, while the fight against Zhang was very controversial in the scoring, you could almost say that win or performance has pretty aged. Like it's like when people talk about Warrington and Luis Alberto Lopez. At the time, there was so much stick for it, but then when you look at what Alberto Lopez did to the Conlan, you know, it's kind of aged like fine wine. That performance, while it was obviously a different circumstance with Hrgovic, won and Warrington lost, it's still 2 performances that at the time they got stick for. When you look at it now, you know, you can kind of say, okay, fair enough, they're not as bad as we thought. Obviously, I think you've got to think of the circumstance that Hrgovic was going through at the time. He had a death in his family. Yeah. He was not there mentally. Realistically, he probably shouldn't have fought that night. But obviously, physically, he's in great health. But mentally, if you're not in great health, you shouldn't be in the ring. And I think everyone will agree with me when I say that. If you're not mentally okay, you should not be doing anything like getting in the ring. You know, make sure you're okay first. When you're mentally okay, get back to fighting. obviously that night for Hrgovic wasn't his best. I think, I agree with you. I scored that for Zhang. I feel like I don't see a stoppage in this one, to be honest. I feel like it'll be a very cagey fight. I feel like it'll be one of those ones where they'll just stand up. It'll be more jabs than anything thrown. And I think when you got to look at the battle of the jabs, I feel like you should probably favour Dempsey McKean just based on, when you look at the build, the height, the reach. Obviously, you cannot discredit Filip Hrgovic, especially when you look at his amateur background. He's a very successful amateur. I see a lot of people can split this easily, but I really can't, I do think I think this fight's gone a little bit under the radar just based on the fact you got Johnny Fisher and Derek Chisora in action, especially when this is a UK card. Those two are big UK names. Hrgovic and Dempsey McKean aren't really. I do think this is going to go to points. Oh, I've got to pick one. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go Dempsey McKean on points. I'm just going to throw it out there now. It's probably going to age horribly. I do feel like it will age horribly, but I do back Dempsey McKean. I'm quite a big fan of Dempsey McKean, so I'm going Dempsey McKean on points.
Interesting. Josh, while you was giving your prediction there, I noticed that I've got my cat over on the kitchen side here, and do a little story here. We got that cat the Monday after the Spence Crawford fight, and in honor of Crawford winning the fight, the cat's now called Bud. So
really,
Bud, yeah.
That's actually very cool. That is very, very cool. I can only take my hat off. I mean, I've not got a hat on, but I'd take my hat off if I had one. That is very, very sick.
Brilliant. So, guys, that's our predictions, our breakdowns of the main card on Saturday night. As Josh said earlier, it's a stacked undercard as well with some of the Matchroom prospects underneath the 4 main heavyweight fights. As always, let us know your predictions in the comments below. Do you agree with me and Josh? Do you see an upset on the card? Let us know your predictions. Hit that comment button. Let us know. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. We've got plenty more content on the way. Myself and Josh will be back with the next episode of the Let's Talk Boxing podcast this week. But until then, Josh, I'm signing off.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for having me. Obviously, I know it's been a bit of a delay since the last one. I do apologise for that. I'll hold my hands up. But yeah, we're back. Very, very big night of boxing tomorrow night. And then obviously, we've still got a very good month of boxing ahead. So we'll be back next week to talk about everything we've just seen. I'd say probably we'll have to go from Spence Crawford onwards. And then we'll talk about what's coming up as well. But yeah, that's all from me.
Absolutely, guys. At Luke SimBoxx, at SimBoxx1 on Twitter, at GCH Boxing on Twitter. Give us all a follow, and we'll catch you on the next one.